let's talk about a team that does have a real shot at winning national championship, and that is the OU softball. And they had probably the best weekend of the season so far, absolutely annihilating Texas Tech out in Lubbock.
It's unreal. Every time you feel like this team has kind of like hit their ceiling, hit their stride, like they come out and just do something stupid the next time they hit the mound. So 36-0 on the year, best start to a season in softball history, a sweep, putting it lightly, against the Red Raiders, outscoring them 43 to nothing. I mean, like that's rigging the sliders, in the PS3 NCAA football game, trying to just completely rack up as many points as you possibly can. But Adam, we kind of hinted at this all year long. Here comes Texas, right? At Texas this weekend, Texas anywhere between 15 and 18, kind of depending on the polls you're looking at. They are 14-1 in their last 15. That lone loss coming to Louisiana, and they're 19-1-1 in their last 21 games. So this coming in playing Texas, they're playing very, very well. The one thing though that I think helps OU in a sense of who are real contenders in the Big 12 to compete with them are your two biggest rivals. You're not going to come in sleepwalking regardless of the records against Texas and Oklahoma State. And I think that is shown true year after year after year. This is not the first time that Oklahoma State and Texas have been good. But, Texas is playing well. If OU doesn't come in and play well, they have a chance to lose. But if this team puts together their A game, you would think they go through and they handle business down in Austin.
Texas is not ranked as highly as Oklahoma State right now. Oklahoma State, I think, is number 6. Texas is they're having a good year. I would say maybe slightly below what their expectations were coming into the season. I think they were number
top
10.
5.
Top 5? Okay.
Yeah, they were high.
Okay, so they're a little bit lower than that. But this series is on the road in Austin versus the Oklahoma State series being at Marita Hines Field. Would you consider this the tougher series of those two still remaining? You think OSU still
seems to play well in Austin over the past few years.
Yeah.
I think they enjoy going down there and playing. And I mean, I guess you think it probably is a little bit more of a rowdier environment. You look at like last year, OU dropped a game in Stillwater, and that place was pretty wild. But yeah, I think it's kind of level playing field because we know Texas fans, and they're not necessarily the beat your chest, get loud type of fans. We know this. And so I think it's kind of a wash. I think you're probably playing a slightly better team at home in Oklahoma State, but I think it's kind of even in my honest opinion. I think it's kind of an even as far as toughness.
Yeah. It's interesting. And Texas Tech is not a very good measuring stick. They're not a very good program on the softball diamond, but hitting 17% of your total season home runs in the last 3 games that you played is crazy. The OU has three hitters in the top 10 in the entire country in home runs hit. And there was a whole bunch of other stats. Ryan Aber tweeted them out. Go check that out. He had a ton of really good stats on softball. Yep. Essentially just saying, hey, whatever the national next highest team, OU's basically double that in a lot of categories, or significantly higher in a lot of categories. Yep. It is insane how dominant this team is. And they've played, I don't think it's the toughest schedule by any stretch, but it's not the easiest either. No. They have played some very good teams along the way, and getting across Texas here will certainly go a long ways, because then you can start talking about breaking some records, and we don't want to, jinx anything necessarily. They've got some tough games. Texas, series right here, Oklahoma State to end the year. But if they can get past Texas, then we're looking at on the road next midweek game at North Texas. You're breaking the school record for consecutive wins. Yep. And then I think the weekend following that at Kansas, you're looking at the other record for the overall sport, NCAA consecutive wins. Yep. Unfortunately, the schedule worked out where both of those games are going to fall on the road. So OU fans aren't going to be able to celebrate that if it were to happen in Norman, but both of those are in sight, and you got to get past this weekend first. Really tough matchup here.
Yeah, and I'll walk back my statement a little bit, because I will say, Oklahoma State dropped a game to Iowa State this past weekend. Iowa State's 19-20 on the year. So I will say I think Oklahoma State's a tad more talented, but at least since about kind of, after conference play-ish, Texas has been more consistent. They've got some quality wins under the belt since they've kind of had a really slow start. Again, have lost one game in their past, 21 games. So they played really well, and there's some quality wins where you look at Oklahoma State, they're winning, but then you've got losses to UT Arlington, strange. You've got losses to, as I mentioned, Iowa State, strange. You're going down to Baylor and you're winning 2-0. So there's just kind of some big question marks in there as far as they seem very inconsistent up there in Stillwater. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how it all plays out. But Adam, you're spot on. You get through this weekend, and all of a sudden that maybe they don't feel pressure. Maybe this team is that talented. They've been there. They've won national championships. The idea of a perfect season, maybe that doesn't affect them. But that seems unhuman. And at times I understand this team may look unhuman, but at some point that has to kind of creep up in your back of your mind. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how they handle it. But you're spot on. If they get through Austin this weekend with unblemished record, again, everything's in front of them as far as not only national championships, but potentially being perfect in doing so.
Do you think that's like you think that's I don't want to say possibility, but this team is so dominant right now. It would be incredible if they were to go through the entire World Series not losing a game. That would be.
It'd be crazy.
I almost don't even think that's possible. I can't really fathom that. That would be like, I don't even, maybe even harder than going 19-0 in the NFL. It's just, that's ridiculous.
It would be stupid. That's for damn sure. But who can't they beat?
They would get the best draw as far as like a regional and a super regional.
I wouldn't think they would lose in the regional or super regional.
Yeah.
Unless, I mean, they would have to have. Well, let me ask you this. Let's play a hypothetical. What's more likely? This team doesn't win a national championship or this team goes undefeated?
I would have to say that it's probably more likely that they don't win the national championship.
It's interesting because I can't, like at this point, I can't see this team not winning the national championship.
Yeah, but man, going perfect, like especially once you get into that pressure cooker, even though it's right up the road in Oklahoma City for you, that's tough. And we saw that team battle some adversity last year, nearly getting knocked out. They were on the ropes against James Madison of all schools. But yeah, that's just so tough. You got so many good teams up there, and it's a gauntlet that you got to work through. There's no off games at that point. Whereas right now, OU gets the off series against Texas Tech. They'll have an off series against KU coming up in a couple weeks. So it's a little bit different. That's going to be incredibly tough to, especially when you know, hey, we can take a game. Like we don't have to win every single one. But at the same time, this team is complete. Like the pitching staff
that's the difference.
Is significantly better.
Yep.
Not necessarily like, well, yeah, I'd say Jordy Ball and Hope Trotwine for sure are probably just as good, if not better, than G. Juarez was last year. But the idea that you have the depth and the consistency with that right now, because last year you had Shannon Sales was good for some time and then kind of fell off, and Nicole May kind of was young, but you never knew what you're going to get. And then Juarez had some off days, and she came back strong in the end to get us there. But yeah, this pitching staff is significantly stronger at this point.
To me, that's been the biggest difference is when the bats went cold last year, this team struggled at times. When it was a low scoring game, it was a pitching battle. Like those were the games you were just like, oh boy, who knows what's going to happen? Depends on who's on the mound, and it may not even depend on who's on the mound. It's what person that day is going to be on the mound, right? There was about 3 different types of Nicole Mays that you could potentially see. Same for Shannon Sale, but having Nicole May as your 2 or 3 slot, maybe she might be a 3 slot right now. I mean,
and she's improved a lot.
She has, last year, in my opinion. That is a deep pitching staff, and it kind of seems. I'm curious to your thoughts here. Hope Trotwine hasn't pitched a ton. And I wonder if this is one of those situations that we have seen in the past where Patty knows what she has and she's just sitting on her.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's kind of something to keep an eye on.
I have thought that. I've wondered if maybe she's the best pitcher on the staff right now. And we just haven't seen enough pitches yet to say that.
Get Jordy as much action as possible, knowing that Hope, you're set, you know what you got there, and put Jordy in as many difficult situations because Hope, as we've seen now in softball, you can't win it with one pitcher anymore. Those days are gone. And so I'm with you on that. I think she may be the number 1 pitcher, and we're just kind of getting her in pieces because she doesn't need that extra experience that Jordy does.
Yeah, she's got the experience. Jordy, she seems like she's got nerves of steel. She's battled through some adversity. She's pitched in some of the tougher games that we've played so far. But it's different. It's different when you get to the World Series. So
It is.
it's nice to know that, hey, you've got two studs right behind her that are going to come in and do really
Yeah.
well, that have played in big games before and in big situations.
What does help is no, Jordy hasn't necessarily played in the World Series, but I mean, she won a national championship, when she was in high school. So that,
Yeah.
and that was on ESPN or ESPN2, one of the two. I remember watching because I was like, hot shot softball player, like on ESPN, like I'll tune in, right? Like that's obviously become a bigger and bigger sport for all OU fans. And yeah, I think she struck out like 20 something people in the game. So,
Yeah.
can the stage, will it get bigger? Of course, right? Like there's not a bigger stage in softball than what happens in Oklahoma City, but it's not like we're talking about a girl who hasn't played in equal stage of where kind of she was at age wise. And so it'll be very interesting to see, but I'm glad I wasn't the only one thinking like, I wonder if this, I wonder if Hope Trotwine's kind of the ace in the bag that Patty's sitting on. And yeah, I think we'll see more and more of her in postseason. But going back to the original point, that's the biggest difference in this team compared to last year, winning a national championship. That's the biggest difference, is the fact that they have a complete pitching staff. And that's a scary thought when you consider all the bats that are in that lineup.
Yeah. Equally as impressive as the hitting is the pitching right now. So as it stands today, I deem this team inhuman until I see something different. But let's talk a little bit about a team that is certainly human. They make quite a few mistakes, and that's baseball.
Yep.
I say that after a really solid week, though. 2-2 again. We sat here last week with Eddie Radosevich and basically said the same thing. We would have taken a 2-2 week going into that lineup that they were going to face. One against Oral Roberts, one against Oklahoma State. I guess they went 2-2, and then lost the Saturday and Sunday game against Oklahoma State. Saturday, kind of a heartbreaker there, being up 7-3, seeing that lead deteriorate in the late innings.
Right?
I think it was the 8th inning. Yeah, it was just slowly just slipping out of the grip there. And then Sunday was really no contest. They just kind of ran us out the stadium there. So it's so frustrating when you have really great series. I would say, great performance. And going into those series against Texas and OSU, you'd say, yeah, give me 1 and 2. That's solid. That, we escape with a win. We don't get swept, and against two teams in the top 10, but you had both of those series won and you couldn't close it out. And so it's so frustrating.
It's just like basketball, right?
It's just like basketball.
Porter and Skip must be hanging out way too freaking much, because these are like identical seasons that are taking place right now.
All the way down to the record, like strength of schedule, number 2 in the nation. RPI, I think they even went up in the RPI after this week. They're up to number 17. As it stands right now, I think we are beating Texas Tech as we're recording this 8-5 into the 5th. We've had several home runs from some guys. But
we're fine through the 5th, though. That's the thing.
It's okay. Top of the 6th, it's OU 10, Texas Tech 5. So there's still a lot of time left, and this is a non-conference game, so it would still be important for RPI, but less so for the Big 12 standings. But yeah, it's like, man, you're capable of winning some of these series and having a resume, signature resume item as far as, hey, we beat OSU at OSU, or we beat Texas in Arlington, something like that, to just say, hey, this is why we should be taken a little bit more seriously. We should be on the fringe of the top 25. We should be getting into some postseason action. I think OU is still relatively safe as a 3 seed in the tournament. But at the same time, like, OU should be in the tournament every year. I think that should be the standard. It shouldn't be that difficult to do that. Maybe every 5 years, 4 years, maybe you have a team that doesn't make it, just like basketball, in my opinion. But you need to be in pretty safely, regardless of how difficult the conference is.
Yep.
You need to not be making silly mistakes that are letting team back into the game. You need to have a more consistent pitching product out of the bullpen. It's almost hilarious that on Tuesday nights we're beating Oklahoma State. We're, as it stands as we record this, we're beating Texas Tech. So it's like the bullpen's doing those things, but then on the weekend the bullpen can't keep a lead.
Yeah.
So, and especially when Skip Johnson is your coach, known pitching guru. So
sure,
there's some things that need to improve there. Got to get out of your own way. Now, on the bright side, you've got some relief coming up on the schedule. You've already played 2 of the tougher teams in the conference in their series, and now you get it a little bit easier. So this weekend is non-conference, Lamar and Pacific coming to Norman. That should be able to win all 3 of those. Should do that. That should be the standard. Should. We saw them lose to New Orleans. And then you've got the two worst teams in the conference after that, KU and Kansas State. So some time for OU to get right, to get some momentum, to get the bats hot, to get the pitching in order. You're not going to go perfect against that entire stretch, most likely, but boost that resume, boost the RPI with some road wins, and then you'll have some tougher chances again against Texas Tech and TCU. West Virginia's playing really good baseball right now, so you'll have some opportunities there at the end of the year to come back and say, hey, we can break through, we can win one of these series that we're supposedly not supposed to. But
Adam, enlighten me a little bit, and as I've noted multiple times in this podcast, I don't follow baseball pretty much at any level. Why are we playing Texas Tech in a non-conference weekday game?
I see it as just an RPI builder.
Okay.
Same reason that we play OSU well, not exactly the same reason that we play OSU in a non-conference game, but yeah, I mean, that's another opportunity for the fans, for the city of Tulsa. I think that game should be played 4 to 5 times a year, in my opinion, in Oklahoma State. And so Texas Tech is just another one. Meet them in Amarillo. It's good for Texas Tech fans. It's good for OU fans in Amarillo. We saw the Sooner Caravan is making a stop out there. So it's a brand new ballpark and the AA affiliate of the Diamondbacks out there now. So I think it's just an exciting way to get a resume builder, because you can only get so much RPI boost from playing Oral Roberts and Wichita State. Dallas Baptist this year is actually really solid, but that's typically your midweek game that is going to be your RPI builder. But yeah, that's why I see that.
Fair enough.
Happening. So
there you go.
It's time for my Adam's optimism segment. I think I've been fairly optimistic about baseball on this segment. It's been, this team has shown that they can do some really good things, but I think just looking at the Big 12 standings now, OU's sitting at 6 right now. They do have currently a losing record, 4-5 in the conference, but you've really only played the two toughest teams in Oklahoma State and Texas. Baylor, you got the 2-1 series win there. OU has actually not swept a Big 12 opponent since 2019, if that tells you anything. But I'm okay with it.
Take that with a grain of salt, right? Because 2020 was probably the best baseball team.
2020, it would have happened, yeah.
Yeah, it would have happened.
Yeah.
So, thanks for that too, COVID. So,
but at the same time, it still didn't happen. So
yes, it's true.
So yeah, anyway, just looking at the Big 12 standings, West Virginia is actually at the top right now. It's kind of hard to gauge the entire standing simply because there's only 9 baseball teams. Iowa State does not play baseball. So every week, one team is playing an conference game. So you don't have even records across the board. So as it stands today, West Virginia is at the top, but I think there's teams right there next to you like Texas and Oklahoma State that are, you could potentially pass them in the standings after already having played them. So you got an easy schedule coming out, the softer schedule here to round out the month. So I like where OU is right now after playing 2 of the really tough series, going 4-4 against OSU and Texas. I guess they didn't go. It'd be they split that. Yeah. So 2-6. Yeah. I think that's decent. Like I'll take it. Could have been a lot better, but I think OU sits in good standings right now. And I think if you get into that 5th spot of the Big 12, I think you feel pretty safe about getting into the tournament.
Yeah.
Still would like to have a lot more. I don't know if that necessarily secures Skip Johnson's job, but it's the first step.